You know that dream, right? Working from your laptop, maybe on a beach somewhere in Bali? It's an image that's captured the imagination of millions. But is this whole digital nomad thing really the great escape it's cracked up to be? Or is there something more complex going on here, with consequences we're only just now starting to get our heads around? Let's start by looking at what's pushing people to make this massive leap in the first place.
So look at this. This is the fantasy, isn't it? Sun, sea, and somehow perfect Wi-Fi. But then you smash that against this quote from a 25-year-old startup founder who actually did it. He says, in London, no one is happy, and in Europe, it's really hard to sustain a life. I mean, that's not just someone wanting a bit more sunshine. That's someone basically rejecting an entire way of living.
And that, right there, is the big question we're tackling in this explainer. When thousands upon thousands of skilled, ambitious people pack their bags and their laptops, what are the ripple effects? What gets left behind?
Okay, so to get to the bottom of that, we first have to figure out why they're leaving. This is all about what's going on inside their heads, that personal calculation that ends with, you know what, I'm out.
All right, first things first. Let's get a really key definition straight. A digital nomad is not your typical expat who moves to another country for a new job there. The absolute key is that they keep an economic link back home. Think of it like this. They're earning, say, a London salary, but living on a Bali budget. This is a totally new kind of migration.
So what's pushing them out the door? Well, according to some great research from Public First, there are some pretty powerful forces at play. Top of the list, no surprise, the absolutely insane cost of living and rent. But it's more than that. It's a feeling of being crushed by taxes, a sense that the culture is negative or crime is too high, and just a basic human need for a little adventure and a better quality of life.
And wow, this quote from a young freelancer in Austria, it just nails that deeper feeling, doesn't it? It's not just about running away from the bad stuff, it's about running towards something better. It's this huge search for who you are and how you actually want to live your life, on your own terms.
Okay, so you have all these individuals making this personal choice. But what happens when they all start showing up in the same place? Well, it stops being individual and starts becoming a global phenomenon. And to see how that works, let's zoom in on one of the world's biggest nomad hubs. Let's call it the Bali experiment.
And make no mistake, this is not some tiny, niche trend. The same report estimates there are about 165,000 British digital nomads out there. I mean, to give you a sense of scale, that is like the entire working-age population of a major city like Newcastle just packing up and working from abroad. That is a huge number of people.
And this is where you'll find them. Yeah, forget that image of the lonely person on a beach with their laptop. The reality is often way more like this, a buzzing global community, all gathered in co-working spaces. They're not just working, they're building networks, bouncing ideas off each other, and creating a whole new kind of professional scene. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because the experience is totally different depending on who you are. For someone who's self-employed, places like Bali are basically paradise. The cost of living is so low you can afford to take risks and experiment with your business, and you're surrounded by all these other driven, ambitious people. But if you're an employee tied to a company back home, well, it's a whole different story. You can feel really isolated, motivation is tough, and the legal and admin stuff is just a nightmare. And you can just feel that entrepreneurial energy in this quote from another young nomad. He says the whole environment is very, very inspiring and motivating. You know, it's this self-selecting group of people who are all out there trying to build something cool and new.
But of course, there's another side to this story. While all these individuals are off building their dreams, there's a consequence back home. What's the cost for the country they left behind? Well, let's talk about the billion-pound bill.
First up, consumer spending. We're talking £3.1 billion. That's money that's no longer being spent in UK shops, pubs, restaurants, you name it. That's a huge hole blown right into the local economy.
And of course, when that spending goes, tax revenue follows it right out the door. The direct hit is an estimated £320 million in lost VAT for the government. And that's every single year. But honestly, that's not even the biggest worry. The real kicker is this. Those nomads still paid £1.6 billion in UK income tax last year. But if they decide to officially change their tax residency, and a lot of countries are rolling out the red carpet to help them do just that, that money could just vanish from the UK's books, completely.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's a brain drain and a wealth drain happening at the exact same time. When your most highly skilled workers and entrepreneurs decide to leave, it doesn't just hurt a spreadsheet in the treasury, it hits everything, from the corner shop all the way up to the country's long-term ability to grow and compete.
Okay, for this last part, I want us to zoom way, way out. Let's look at the big picture. What if this isn't just about economics or lifestyle choices? What if we're seeing a fundamental change in how cultures even work in our super-connected world? What if this is a movement against the mainstream itself? So there's this really fascinating paper from the world of social physics, of all places, that gives us a whole new lens to see this through. And it basically asks this wild question. What if digital nomadism isn't just a trend, but a real-life example of how a smaller minority culture can actually grow and thrive by pushing against the dominant one instead of just getting swallowed up by it? So their model kind of looks like this. On the left, you've got the old way of thinking. There's one big, dominant, mainstream culture, and eventually everything else just gets absorbed into it. But what they found is you can get the picture on the right, a stable, thriving counterculture that exists right alongside the mainstream. Not one blended culture, but two distinct ones. So what's the secret ingredient? What makes this possible? It's simple, really. High connectivity. The internet. It lets all those people who feel like they don't quite fit in with the mainstream find each other, no matter where they are in the world. And instead of being lonely voices, they become a community, reinforcing their shared ideas and building their own alternative culture.
And that just brings everything full circle, doesn't it? From these big, complex physics models, right back to something deeply personal. It's captured perfectly by this Reddit user looking back on their travels. I realized that the only thing limiting my own life was my imagination. I mean, think about that. That is such a huge mental shift. From seeing your life as a path you have to follow, to seeing it as a completely blank canvas.
And that really leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. Look, this whole digital nomad thing, it's a huge signal. It's proof that when the mainstream options, the 9-to-5, the crazy high rent, the life you're supposed to live, when that stops working for enough people, they don't just sit around and complain. They start building something new. The only real question left is, what new worlds are we going to build next?